My name is Maya Collins. I'm 17 years old, and I died in my bedroom in Portland on a Thursday night while scrolling through my phone. Nobody found me for almost 20 minutes because my parents thought I was just doing what I always did, lying on my bed, staring at the screen. And when my mom finally knocked to ask if I wanted dinner, she found me blue and unresponsive, with my phone still clutched in my hand. The doctor said it was a heart condition nobody knew I had, something about an irregular rhythm that can happen to young people without warning. But what I remember is feeling my chest tighten while I was reading comments on a post I'd made, feeling dizzy, and then feeling like I was falling through my bed, through the floor, through everything solid until nothing around me was real anymore. I could hear my mom screaming from somewhere far away, and I wanted to tell her I was okay, but I couldn't find my voice, couldn't find my body, couldn't find anything except this strange floating sensation, like I'd become untethered from gravity. The last thing I saw before everything changed was my phone screen still glowing with notifications, little red circles multiplying even as I drifted away from being able to see them. If stories like this matter to you, if you've ever felt like something about the way we're living now is hollowing us out in ways we can't quite name, then I need to tell you what I saw during those 20 minutes when I wasn't breathing, because it changed how I understand everything we're doing to ourselves without realizing it. The transition wasn't dramatic like in movies, no tunnel of light or feeling of peace, just a gradual awareness that I was still conscious, but no longer in my bedroom. I was somewhere else, somewhere that felt more real than real, like I'd been living in a badly focused photograph my whole life, and someone had suddenly adjusted the lens. I could think more clearly than I ever had before, like my thoughts weren't fighting through static anymore. And I realized with shock how much noise had been in my head constantly, how much of my mental space had been occupied by half-formed anxieties about what people thought, what they were saying, what I should post, what I should delete, what everyone else was doing that I was missing. All of that was just gone. And in the quiet that replaced it, I could finally hear myself think actual thoughts instead of just reacting to an endless stream of inputs. I became aware of a presence nearby, someone who'd been there the whole time, but I was only now noticing because the static was gone. When I turned toward the presence, it resolved into a person, and I knew without being told that this was Jesus. Though he didn't look like any picture I'd seen in my grandmother's house or in the Christian school I attended until 5th grade. He looked young and old simultaneously, like he contained every age at once, and his eyes held something I'd never seen in any human face, a combination of knowing everything and still being gentle about it. He didn't speak out loud, but I heard him anyway. Felt his thoughts becoming clear in my mind, like he was showing me things rather than telling me. The first thing he showed me was my own life, but not the version I'd been performing online. The real one, underneath all the curation and filtering and careful image management. I saw myself at 13, getting my first phone, and feeling like I'd been handed the keys to connection, to belonging, to finally being part of something bigger than my boring suburban existence. I saw the exact moment that shifted when the connection started feeling more like obligation, when checking became compulsion, when the thing that was supposed to make me feel less alone started making me feel more isolated than I'd ever been before. He showed me how I'd started measuring my worth by metrics that changed constantly, little numbers going up and down based on factors I couldn't control, how I'd begun to see my actual life as just content to feed the machine that I'd convinced myself was building something, but was really just consuming me bit by bit. I watched myself become someone who experienced everything through the lens of how it would look to other people, who couldn't enjoy a moment without immediately trying to capture and share it, who'd stopped having private thoughts because I was always composing them into posts. I saw the night I'd stayed up until 3 in the morning, scrolling through other people's curated highlights and feeling like my real messy life was somehow failing by comparison. The time I'd cried in the bathroom at school because a post I'd carefully crafted got ignored. The countless hours I'd spent building and maintaining a version of myself that wasn't quite real, but also wasn't exactly fake, just performance art that everyone agreed to call authenticity. Then Jesus showed me something that made my chest hurt, even though I didn't have a physical chest anymore. He showed me all the real moments I'd missed while I was looking at the screen. The way my little brother had tried to show me something he'd built, but I'd barely looked up. The conversation my mom had tried to start about something that mattered to her, but I'd given her distracted half responses while my attention stayed on notifications. The sunset I'd photographed but never actually seen because I was too busy filtering it. The whole parallel life I could have been living if I'd been present for it. What hurt most was seeing how much people had tried to reach the real me and how completely I'd become unavailable. Not because I was mean or didn't care, but because I'd trained myself to exist in 2 places at once, and the place I'd prioritized was the one where nobody could actually touch me. If you feel there's more to understand about what we're trading away for these little glowing screens that promise connection while delivering isolation, stay with me, because what Jesus showed me next made me understand why he said this matters more than most people realize. He took me somewhere I can only describe as being able to see the structure underneath the surface of reality, like getting a backstage view of how things actually work instead of just watching the performance. I could see people's souls, which sounds weird and religious, but I don't know another word for it. That essential core of who they actually are, underneath all the layers of performance and defense and carefully managed image. And I could see what was happening to those souls, especially in people my age and younger, the ones who'd never known a world without constant connection and constant performance. Their souls looked thin somehow, stretched too tight over too much surface area, like they were trying to exist in too many places at once, and the core of them was getting worn down to nothing. I saw how the constant need to perform, to curate, to present, to manage was creating a split between the version they showed and the version they were. And that split was like a wound that wouldn't heal because they kept making it bigger. I saw kids younger than me, 10 and 11 years old, already completely fluent in the language of metrics and performance, already measuring their worth by numbers, already experiencing the hollow anxiety of never being enough because enough kept moving. I saw the way they'd learned to see themselves from outside, to narrate their own lives like they were content, to evaluate every experience based on how it would play rather than how it felt. And I saw that they didn't even know they'd lost something because they'd never had the chance to experience life without the constant split, without the performance, without the exhausting work of being their own publicity managers. Then Jesus showed me the part that really broke me. The thing I hadn't understood even though I'd been living it. He showed me how the constant flood of curated highlights from other people's lives was doing something to my capacity for contentment, for gratitude, for being present with what was actually in front of me. Every time I'd scrolled past someone's perfect moment, some piece of me had learned that my imperfect moment wasn't enough, had absorbed the message that real life was supposed to look like the edited version, had felt that little stab of inadequacy that comes from comparison. And it wasn't anyone's fault exactly. We were all just showing our best moments, like everyone always has. But something about the volume and velocity and constant availability of it was overwhelming the part of us that used to be able to appreciate what we had instead of fixating on what we didn't. I saw myself scrolling past travel photos while sitting in my actually pretty nice backyard, past relationship highlights while my actual boyfriend, who genuinely cared about me, tried to talk to me, past achievement celebrations while ignoring my own smaller, real accomplishments. I saw how I'd been training myself to see my life as insufficient, training myself to always want to be somewhere else, someone else, living some other shinier version of existence. And the worst part was that I thought I was connecting, thought I was being part of a community, thought I was building something, when really I was just making myself incapable of being satisfied with the actual, real, beautiful, messy life I had. Jesus didn't say any of this with judgment, just showed it to me with this sadness, like he was watching someone choose poison because it came in a pretty package. Then he showed me something about connection that made me understand why this matters on a soul level, why it's not just about being distracted or wasting time, but about something more fundamental. He showed me that humans were designed for real connection, face to face, soul to soul, being known and knowing others, and that this kind of connection is literally what our souls need to grow and thrive and become who we're supposed to be. But real connection requires vulnerability, requires being present, requires risk, requires letting people see the unfiltered version that might be rejected. What we'd created instead was the simulation of connection that gave us the social feedback without requiring the vulnerability, that let us maintain control over exactly what people saw, that protected us from rejection by never fully showing up. And our souls were starving because you can't feed yourself on simulation, can't grow on performance, can't become who you're supposed to be when you're only practicing being a carefully managed version of yourself. He showed me that every hour I'd spent curating content instead of actually connecting was practice for being unavailable, practice for living at a distance from real intimacy, practice for the kind of isolation that feels like connection, but is really just being alone together with everyone else who's also performing instead of being present. I saw that I was part of a whole generation practicing being unavailable, learning to exist at arm's length from real relationship, and that this was changing us in ways that would last long after we deleted the apps. Then the vision expanded, and I saw something about the world we were creating without meaning to, the direction we were heading if nothing changed. I saw people surrounded by others, but profoundly alone, communicating constantly, but rarely truly connecting, collecting relationships like metrics, but not knowing or being known by anyone. I saw the small daily choices, the looking at screens instead of faces, the choosing comfortable distance over risky presence, the trading actual connection for simulated interaction. And I saw how those choices were adding up to something bigger, something that looked like a whole society of people who'd forgotten how to actually be with each other. I saw children growing up learning that attention meant looking at someone while also looking at a screen, that conversation meant typing, that friendship meant maintaining a presence in someone's feed. I saw them becoming adults who had hundreds of connections, but no real intimacy, who could present themselves beautifully, but couldn't be vulnerable, who knew how to perform, but had forgotten how to simply be. And running underneath all of it, like a current, was this low-grade anxiety, the sense of never being enough, never doing enough, never measuring up to the endless highlight reel that everyone else was presenting. I saw people my age having panic attacks over metrics, crying over comments, building their entire sense of worth on numbers that meant nothing but felt like everything. I saw them medicating the anxiety without addressing the source, treating the symptoms while the cause kept getting worse. And I saw that nobody was talking about it honestly because everyone was too busy pretending they had it together, performing confidence while drowning in inadequacy. Jesus showed me that this wasn't sustainable, that you can't build a life on performance and simulation, that souls need real connection the way bodies need food, and eventually you starve on nothing, even if you're eating constantly. He showed me that a whole generation was at risk of reaching adulthood, having never learned to truly be present, truly vulnerable, truly connected, and that this would shape everything about the world they'd create, the relationships they'd form, the depth they'd be capable of. Then he asked me a question without words, just looked at me with those eyes that saw everything, and somehow I understood what he was asking. Do you want to go back different? Not just back to life, but back changed, willing to give up the simulation for the real thing, willing to risk being present even though it meant being vulnerable, willing to put down the screen and look at faces even though faces can reject you in ways screens can't. I wanted to say yes immediately, but something in his presence made me understand he was asking whether I was really willing to do that, to live differently, to give up the comfortable distance I'd gotten so used to practice being available, even though it was scarier and harder and wouldn't give me the same dopamine hits that the screen provided. I felt myself being pulled back then, like a rope was attached to something in my chest and was being pulled from the other side. And the last thing I saw was Jesus looking at me with this expression that was part hope and part concern, like he was sending me back into something dangerous, and he wasn't sure I'd remember what I'd seen once I was in it again. The transition back was abrupt, like waking from a dream by falling. And suddenly, I was in my body again, gasping and choking with paramedics around me, and my mom crying, and my phone on the floor where it had fallen when I collapsed. My first instinct, automatic and unthinking, was to reach for the phone, and I saw my hand moving toward it and stopped myself. And that small choice felt enormous. Felt like the first real decision I'd made in years. I've been back for 6 months now, and nothing about my external life looks that different, except for the one big obvious thing, which is that I'm alive when I should be dead. But everything about how I move through my life has changed in ways that are hard to explain to people who weren't where I was. I still have social media, but I use it completely differently, more like a tool than a drug, and I can feel the pull every day to slide back into the old patterns of checking and comparing and performing. I deleted most of the apps for the first month, and when I reinstalled them, I put time limits on and turned off notifications and made a rule that I wouldn't look at my phone when I was with real people. My friends thought I was being dramatic or judgy, and maybe I am, but I can't unsee what I saw, can't forget what it felt like to see my own soul getting thin from being stretched across too much performance space. I have actual conversations now, awkward and stumbling and vulnerable, where I try to be present instead of planning what to say while the other person is still talking. I look at my little brother's Lego creations and actually see them. Tell my mom I'm listening when she talks and actually mean it. Go outside without immediately thinking about how it would photograph. It's harder than it sounds because I'm fighting years of training, fighting the part of me that learned to experience everything through the lens of how it would be received, fighting the constant pull to check whether I'm missing something. But I'm also experiencing moments of actual connection that I'd forgotten were possible. Times when I'm fully present and someone else is fully present, and something real passes between us that can't be captured or performed or measured. I'm learning that those moments are what I was actually looking for all along when I was scrolling and posting and checking. That what I wanted was to be seen and known and connected, but I'd been trying to get it through a medium that couldn't deliver it, like trying to get nutrition from pictures of food. The hardest part is watching my friends and my brother and kids younger than him doing what I used to do, and knowing I can't explain what I saw in a way that would make sense to them if they haven't seen it themselves. My name is Maya Collins. I'm 17 years old, and I died with my phone in my hand on a Thursday night in Portland. What I saw during those 20 minutes changed how I understand what we're doing to ourselves, how the tools we thought would connect us are teaching us to perform instead of being present, to curate instead of being vulnerable, to measure worth by metrics instead of by the quality of actual connection. I saw that social media isn't just distracting us or wasting our time, but actually changing something fundamental about our capacity for real intimacy, real presence, real soul-level connection with each other, and with whatever divine thing we're supposed to be connecting with. I came back with a choice to make every day. To practice being present, even though it's harder and scarier and less immediately rewarding than retreating into the comfortable distance of screens. I can't tell you what to do with your own life, can't judge anyone for making different choices, can only tell you what I saw and let you decide what it means for you. But I wonder sometimes, watching people around me living through their phones, building their identities in public while their private selves get smaller and quieter and more isolated, whether they'll figure it out before something fundamental is lost, before a whole generation reaches adulthood having never learned to truly be present with another person, truly vulnerable, truly available for the kind of connection that requires being fully there. I don't know how much time we have before the changes become permanent, before we raise a generation that doesn't even remember what it felt like to be present without performing, connected without curating, seen without being filtered. I just know that every time I reach for my phone to fill a moment of boredom or anxiety or uncertainty, I'm choosing between practice for real connection and practice for comfortable isolation. And that choice matters more than I ever understood before I died. What are you practicing? That's not rhetorical. That's the question that haunts me now. Watching people's faces illuminated by screens while the actual faces of people who love them go unnoticed. Every moment we're training ourselves for something, building capacity for either presence or performance, either vulnerability or distance, either real connection or its simulation. And what we practice now is who we'll become later, the shape our souls will take, the depth we'll be capable of when it finally matters most. The tools aren't good or evil by themselves, but what we're using them for, how we're letting them shape us, what we're trading away for the small hits of validation and the comfortable distance from real intimacy, those things matter more than most people realize. I saw what we're becoming. I saw where this leads if nothing changes. And I came back different, or trying to be different, fighting every day against patterns that feel comfortable but make me less capable of the one thing I was actually made for, which is real connection with other real people in real time, without filters or curation or the safe distance of screens. I can't make anyone else choose differently. Can only tell you what I saw and hope it means something. Hope it makes you pause before reaching for the phone. Hope it makes you look up at the actual faces around you and see them while they're still there to be seen. Because the dead stay dead, except for sometimes when they don't. And I don't know why I got sent back, but I know it matters what I do with it. whether I let the gravity of the old patterns pull me back in, or whether I keep fighting to stay present, to stay vulnerable, to stay available for real connection, even though it's scarier and harder and doesn't come with metrics that tell me I'm doing it right. Which life are you living? The real one or the performed one? The connected one or the simulated one? The one where you practice being present or the one where you practice being comfortable at a distance? I can't answer for you, but the question is there whether you acknowledge it or not, and every hour you're answering it whether you mean to or not. I saw what we're losing. I saw what we could have instead. And now I can't unsee it, can't forget it. Can't go back to the comfortable unconsciousness of just doing what everyone else is doing. All I can do is try to live different and hope that somehow it matters, that somehow the choice to be present instead of performed ripples out further than I can see. What will you choose?